As artists, one of the biggest battles we fight is seeing our creations through. We have a million ideas swimming through our head. We start some of them. Out of the ones we start, we continue working on some of them. Some of them we even finish. And sometimes we even release the finished version to the public. The process to bring an idea to fruition can often be a treacherous one, and not all ideas should be given that attention. That said, completion is underrated. It's hard to explain, but finishing something and releasing it to the world is therapeutic. It's not just therapeutic, it's the reason why we make art in the first place, and every single step in the journey to making a piece of art has value. It doesn't even matter if a single person sees the art once you release it. We're not releasing for feedback or notoriety or money. You're releasing for the sake of releasing. What does it mean to release? It means letting go. The idea, the art, no longer belongs to you. Whether it goes unnoticed or gets critically acclaimed, it's not up to you, and it shouldn't factor into the reason why you release in the first place. The art does not belong to you, and your unfinished ideas are being held hostage by your procrastination and your perfectionism. If you have a child, just because the child is yours, it doesn't mean you can keep it locked at home forever. Art is no different. It's independent and has a mind of its own. And the creative energy life force that gifted you this art will punish you creatively if you don't bear the responsibility of seeing the art through, bringing it to its final form and giving it the gift of freedom. I've had a few creative renaissance in my life, and the catalyst for the most recent was familiarizing myself with every single stage in making and releasing art. The only way out is through, and the only way to guarantee improvement is reiteration. I used to finish such a small percentage of the things that I would start. I always had so many ideas and I started so many, and I felt as if I only had enough time to see the ones through that were promising. It was changing this mindset that sparked immense creative growth. So as a result, I decided to create this video, show a little roadmap of each stage in the process, and explain why each is important and how to use reiteration to get better at your craft. I call it the path of release resistance. So let's start with the initial friction. Sometimes the friction to start a new project is high or low. Regardless, there always seems to be some friction. As artists, we love the feeling of being in flow and freely expressing. But there's always the initial dread of staring at the blank page, the blank canvas, the empty computer file. It could be even the dread of getting the materials out to get started. It just rarely ever starts as glamorous as creating can seem or feel. It's just you and your idea or your desire for an idea and what feels like an insurmountable amount of work ahead of you. The size may vary, but there's always the obstacle of mustering up the courage to start. And no matter how smooth it can feel, entering flow is always more of a challenge than continuing flow. So finish projects. Finish projects and start new ones. The more you finish, the more you start, and the less friction you feel every time you start. Friction can arise at any point while you're making a creative project, and the releasing of that creative project means that you made it past every single friction point. Having a bunch of unfinished projects means you didn't. You're showing yourself that when things get hard, you don't see the art through. And therefore, you feel friction to start. You know that if you start, once you hit a roadblock, you might not ever finish. You're scared you're not going to execute. You're embarrassed to make something bad. You're shameful that you don't have the discipline to finish. No wonder there's friction. Every time you finish a piece of art, even if you hate it, there's still that relief of oh, okay, that wasn't so bad. That charges you up, increases your confidence, and graces you with less friction on your next iteration. Now let's talk about friction points in general. As creatives, we all feel friction at different points. Okay, I'll use myself as an example. When making a song, coming up with the lyrics, coming up with the melody can feel very effortless, right? Minimal friction. But because I'm not that great of a singer, delivering the vocals can oftentimes be anxiety inducing and feel daunting. We just get friction for different reasons, right? I'm saying that I often get friction because of my fear of my ability to execute when it comes to recording vocals. But then sometimes I get friction when it comes to mixing them, not because I can't execute, but because I'm lazy and mixing can feel tedious. Regardless, there's always friction points, and the way to overcome them is through iteration. It's important to note here that the goal here is not perfection. Okay, we're not working on one aspect over and over until we get it exactly where we want. We're getting it to the best of our current abilities, and then we're continuing to move forward in the process. So that on the iteration where we do execute, we're familiar with the habit of completion, and the muscle of finishing is strong and defined. This feels like a good time to address approximation versus execution. We're all familiar with having an extremely ambitious idea in our head and not having the skills, time, money, resources, technical proficiency, etc. to be able to execute it. If all of our approximations are way out of our league in terms of skill, then we'll never make anything, or the things that we do make will never reach our expectations. So, in order to close the gap between what we approximate and what we have the ability to execute, we either need to lower our ambitions or we need to increase our ability to execute. Okay, this can be a tough pill for a lot of people to swallow. From my experience, great art lies in the sweet spot just outside of our current ability to execute, right in between approximation and execution. If every time we want to make a piece of art, we approximate something that's the same as things that we've already created, then there's no room for growth. Conversely, if every time we want to make a piece of art, we approximate something that's way outside of our ability to execute, there's still no room for growth because it's too high of a jump and we'll just hit a wall. So that sweet spot is where we approximate something that's just barely out of reach. It's not so ambitious it's impossible, but in some way, shape, or form, it's more ambitious than anything that we've done before, and it's going to force us to grow in some way in order to execute. There's this world where we pull it off, and our execution rises to the occasion to meet the approximation. And we succeed. We bring our idea to fruition while also having challenged ourselves and gotten better at the same time. It's this relationship between approximation and execution that we're leveraging to get better at our craft through reiteration. With each completion, we either succeeded in increasing our execution or we learned more about where we falter and where we excel so that next time we can better approximate. Or ideally, both of these things. Now, let's talk about the unforeseen. The thing that makes art beautiful is what it teaches us, what it shows us, what it allows us to feel. As creators of art, we're not absolved from this. In fact, it's the reason why we create. What this means is that we need to finish art for the sake of what it could be. How many times do we think something sucks and then realize it doesn't once we see it through? Like, in other words, we're depriving ourselves of making good art simply by not finishing. Even if you mess up a big stroke on a painting that you had specific plans for, do you stop and start again, or do you flow with it? Who are you when things aren't perfect and you're still expected to execute? Do you embrace your mistake and turn it into a masterpiece, or do you discard it and start over? Creating can be a very humbling practice. And learning how to let go of the outcome and move in flow with the world is important. Instead of trying to impose your will so hard, allow the art to make itself. Change your perspective. And if you mess up, don't view it as a mistake. View it as the creative energy life force guiding you in a different direction, and lean into it. There's often little nuances within releasing that expose you to truths about your art. Oftentimes, truths that have nothing to do with the art itself, and ones that you never would have figured out if not for finishing. For example, as a musician, when it's time to release a song, there are things that I must do. I must title it, I must decide the capitalization, I must decide the cover art, the colors that are involved, etc. On the surface, these might seem like things that don't offer anything to the music itself, but that's wrong. The title is the first thing we see when we hit play on a song and has a massive impact on how we interpret it. The colors in the cover art invoke certain emotions, right? We can make our cover art silly, gross, fearful, horny, sexy, serious, whatever we want. By going through all these little prerequisites of release, we're learning more things about our art. We're putting the bow on the present, right? We're finishing our art so that it exists properly in the world. So that when we look back on it, we view it through the right lens. And so does the rest of the world when they see it. Whether it's the soundtrack to the movie, whether it's the outfit that you're wearing while you're knitting a sweater on Instagram. Everything surrounding the art gets roped into the art itself, blurring the lines between art and brand, and setting the stage for the feeling of satisfaction that's the reason why we create and consume in the first place. Now, let's talk about the release. The act of releasing your art plays an interesting role in the art's creation, and it's oftentimes not even categorized within the actual creative process. I think this is a huge mistake. Okay, while releasing the piece of art might not actually change the art itself, it has a massive impact on the creative process. For one, it closes what would normally be an untied thought loop. There's this feeling when you release a project that's completely different than actually finishing it. this feeling of release. It's like a weight lifted off of your shoulders. I find that when I have a bunch of unreleased creative projects, unclosed loops, it weighs me down. It stops me from creating new things. And even the things that I made that art about, whatever I was writing about, I seem to hold on to and ruminate with. Like, let's say I write a song about losing my grandma. The act of writing through these feelings, I mean, it feels like emotional processing, right? And so releasing the art seems like the integral final step. Instead of just processing the emotions, publishing them, I'm releasing them, I'm freeing myself up to feel new ones. In general, the less unreleased projects I'm sitting on, the more freedom I feel to start new ones. Again, this doesn't really have to do with being seen. It's the act of publishing and releasing itself that offers these benefits. Now, let's address one of the final and most important components, okay? Engaging with the world and people through your finished piece of art. It's important not to use metrics like how many streams something has, how many people like it to determine the value of your art. The value of art is always going to be subjective, okay? That said, you can learn more about your art through the way that people and the world engage with it. You know, it's about people hearing a bunch of your songs and falling in love with a particular one. It's about people being indifferent towards a song, and then when a certain part comes on, watching their face light up and start to like it. It's about seeing people take you more seriously or less seriously after you play a song for them. It's about seeing someone going through a hard time be able to relate to a song. It's about seeing a song invoke one emotion from someone and seeing it invoke another emotion in someone else. It's about seeing a song hit different when you're in a certain location and a certain time of day versus another one. Look, it's like if everyone thinks you're a nice guy, right? And someone calls you an asshole. And you're like, well, I know in my heart that I'm a nice guy. I try to be a nice guy. Everyone else thinks I'm a nice guy. I treated this guy the same. Well, you can use that evidence to be like, to not feel guilty and to be like, no, I know where I stand. I'm not an asshole. And it's important to note that's not just simply not caring what people think. You're actually using what people think to help better understand and confirm or deny the preconceived notions you already have in your head. It's about engaging with the world, being in touch with your surroundings, trying to have an impact, and being cognizant of your impact. Allowing the people around you to confirm the truths you already know or highlight the ones you didn't. You're not judging yourself simply based off people's opinions, but you're also not hiding from everyone so that no one has an opinion. You're simply engaging with the world through your art and inherently opening yourself up to feedback and allowing people to engage with your creation. If we want to truly call ourselves artists, I don't think that this is a choice. We have to invoke discipline. We have to invest in our creative process, not for status and not for money, but for the sake of craft, for the sake of not depriving yourself, not depriving your craft of the benefits of consistent reiteration, and not depriving the world around you of the things you create. If you're in a creative block, I don't think that there's a better cure other than to iterate. It definitely beats waiting around for inspiration. I've struggled with reiteration at times, and I've reached these conclusions not because it was convenient for me, but it was because it was what I needed to evolve. And I'm saying all these things because I need to hear them just as much as everyone else, okay? So I just hope that there's someone out there that's benefiting from hearing this, and that is benefiting from this current iteration of mine. The likelihood is that this video I spent 10 hours plus on isn't going to reach many people at all. And that I walked this trail for an hour, sweated through my shirt, just looking for a good spot to film at, set up the camera and filmed here shirtless, just so like 10 people or something could listen to this and maybe not even make it this far. Nonetheless, I find massive fulfillment in fighting the initial friction, overcoming every obstacle along the way, and releasing my art out into the world.